Catherine Delahunty.
Mr. Speaker, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that the Prime Minister can't remember anything, and it's also embarrassing that the Prime Minister doesn't understand our history. Most high school students have a better grasp of the so-called settlement of Aotearoa New Zealand than the Prime Minister has displayed. It is really awkward too that this government doesn't appear to understand that the latest Waitangi Tribunal ruling is super clear, crystal and uncomfortably clear, that tangata whenua never ceded sovereignty in 1840. The government hasn't taken that on board, can't understand it, won't come to grips with it, and is showing no leadership on the very crucial issue, which is that rangatira who signed the treaty never signed away their sovereignty. So I've got a little quiz for the Prime Minister, a little history quiz to help him along, and it might be possible for some others to answer the quiz as well. I'm sure there are people here who know the answers, even though he doesn't seem to. For a start, question one to the Prime Minister: New Zealand was settled peacefully, or New Zealand was confiscated from tangata whenua through violence and dubious legal tricks? Discuss which is true without contradicting yourself. Wouldn't that be great to have somebody capable of that in the leadership role in this country? We'd love to see an essay as well by the Prime Minister quoting himself when he said that Māori are grateful, quote, for the capital and skills brought by the others, the rest of us, the settlers, the colonisation process. Presumably he means especially those that we used to strip them of their land, poison their resources and suppress their culture. It was interesting that Prime Minister, when he made this statement about how grateful Māori are, was speaking in the present tense. And in the essay, I would really like him to address the examples of Māori individuals and groups who have expressed their gratitude to the Prime Minister for these wonderful gifts. I haven't met these people, but no doubt in an essay he could explain this, because I have never seen so many people confused by his grasp on history. The other fascinating question that he needs to address was New Zealand was unusual for its peaceful settlement process. Now that's what he said. He said that this country was nicer than everywhere else. Colonisation is actually a form of rape. Rape or rape nicely. There's not much difference to the victim. So here we go indeed. What are the specific differences between the nicer forms of violence used by the Crown in the 1800s, such as gunboats in the Waikato and the Coromandel, raupatu, whakatohia or tainui, scorched earth for tūhoi, and legalised theft for everybody else? How does that make us different from all the other settler countries? I think we have a right to an answer to that question. If the Prime Minister is going to say we were settled peacefully, he needs to be able to explain how nice it was, just how different it was, how superior it was to be colonised by the English. Wouldn't that be a great story to tell? The other question I think in the quiz would be important would be, the Waitangi Tribunal has ruled that sovereignty was not ceded in 1840. Explain why this is inconvenient and how he plans to ignore it, because that is in fact what he plans to do. Most of the time the Waitangi Tribunals are recognised in this House as the basis of the treaty settlement process, but not this one. This one's going to be marginalised and ignored because it's inconvenient. The other part of the quiz, the last question I'd like to put to our ill-informed Prime Minister is discuss how basic historical knowledge is important for a Prime Minister, and what should happen if the Prime Minister demonstrates less knowledge than most high school students. I think it would be useful if he could come to grips with this so that the rest of us need not feel so embarrassed and ashamed that the person who means to lead our country forward out of historical problems has no grasp on history whatsoever. I think somebody needs to explain the word settlement to the Prime Minister. I don't expect him to be a historian. I'm not a historian, but from very, very fundamental reading, it is obvious that the period between 1840 and 1900 was not a peaceful settlement process. In fact, the period between 1840 and 1860 was not as violent as during the land wars, but was a very difficult time. I wonder if the Prime Minister's ever heard of the Flagstaff Wars of the 1840s, the Wairau incident in the 1840s, whether he's ever heard of any of those incidents that showed that the treaty was under threat right from day one. It's very important that we don't minimise our own history so that we can have a visionary, positive way forward together. We don't teach those 1950s myths anymore. We don't tell children we're the best country in the world in terms of our historical colonisation process. We don't lie to the people anymore about what happened. We are honest and we try to face up to our history so that we can create a country where everybody has a place. We need everybody to listen to the truth.